Happy Friday, team. It is Food for Thought Friday, and we are wrapping up the week with our final Jeff Ed, and it's me back. So last Friday, I was lucky enough to have a day off and go pop out and do a little bit of camping, which is great for the soul. So it was revived for this week, and it's been a nice full week. Saw me on Monday. Coach Tony and Greg had an absolute cracker in the kitchen on Wednesday. And our last nutrition focus for the week is today, and leads perfectly into what the topic's about as well. We're talking about our 1.5 days, what it's all about, how to use it, why we've got it there, the importance of it, and that's a little bit of the chat. So I know it's a topic that comes up a lot across all the different programs and platforms. In Jeff Life, obviously, we talk about it. You had Jono going on about it, sticking to things 5.5 days, giving you 1.5 day off. On his 45-day challenge, we've got the 1.5 day off. In our one-on-one programs, it's built into what we coach and how we do it, and there's a very important reason for that. The only people that don't get to enjoy it are 21-day challenges, because you've only got 21 days. So we want to maximize things, but and particularly on mine as well, we have an ed in this space right at the end, because once you've been through it, it's right, well, how do I take this to the next step? And the understanding the concepts and theories behind what sort of the 1.5 days is all about is going to set you up for that. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So the importance of it, what it means, how we go about it, and what it's sort of been designed. And it might be a sticking point for some, and hopefully if it was, you're now going to have a couple sort of reasons why you want to implement it, how you can implement it better, what it actually means. And it's just this term of things. All right. So swipe in, let me know how you guys are doing, what's happening, how your week has been. Make yourself a little cup of tea. And we've got the next sort of half an hour to chat. I'm just going to wet the old lips here. So Gabby is here. How's it going, Gabby? Pat Govender, Cheryl, how are you? Tracy, how's it going? Rose Everett, how are you? Karika is also saying hi. Estelle, starting your one-on-one in May, so you need to get all the tips and tools. And this is exactly what it's about. So I did film one of these, must have been many months ago, but it's a topic that often comes up, and there are a lot of new people around here as well. So if it is your if you're quite new to the Jeff system of things, you might not have understood much about it. So it's in our principles, but we don't really know what it all means. So this is an opportunity to refresh it and go through it again. And when you go into the one-on-one, it's very important, and I'm going to talk to why it's important and all of that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is bring up some slides, and we will go through this all, and we'll be able to check out what is going on. So today's session obviously is why and how we do our 5.5 days. So 5.5 days on, 1.5 days off. That's essentially, if your maths is good, makes up 7 days of the week. And that's what we're talking about. So what are the 5.5 days, and what is the other day and a half? So essentially it's the 80-20 rule. So sticking to something 80% of the time, giving you 20% of the time kind of to be off. So it's 5.5 days on your plan, whatever that plan is, or whatever your goals are. You might have a structured program, or you might just be mindful of the way that you're doing things. Whatever the case is, you should have 80% of the time really be focusing on your nutrition, your food choices, your portions, or 80% of the time following the program that we've given you. And that means you've got a day and a half off, where it's either for what I call misses or an opportunity to practice. Okay, and I'll explain a little bit around that in a bit. But what a miss is, and how we can actually use it to practice things, and what we actually want to do in that space for it. So there's a day and a half off. How and when we use that might vary a little bit, which I'll get to as well. But it means that we don't have to stick to something 100% of the time in the way that we're approaching things. We're looking at it, stick to that 80% rule, shoot for 80%. And we know if we get to 80%, we're still going to get results. Right, and there are 5 reasons that they kind of intertwined, but I'm going to touch on each of them. And you'll see the why, why we're using a day and a half off. One of them is sustainability. The second is consistency. Another is actually for physiological reasons, which we'll dig into. The fourth is for results, for better results. And fifth is a psychological mindset approach. So I'm going to talk a little bit into each of those and why and how they all are important. All right. So the first one, sustainability. All right. And what's important here is we want to give people a nutrition approach, ways of eating, or a nutrition guide or a plan that you can stick to. All right. If you can't stick to it, no good. All right. The goal here is to give you something that there's a way of eating that you can see yourself doing in months and years' time. So if it's not sustainable, the chances are it's not really worth going through. It will change in terms of portions and how strict you are and whatever, but the general theme has to be sustainable. Right? That's why often an all or nothing approach doesn't really work, because you're either 100% on it or 100% off it. We want to give a good focus 80% of the time with a little bit of juice to kind of play with on the other 20%. It needs to be sustainable so that you can learn from it. It needs to be sustainable so that you can implement it. If it's not changing your behavior and your knowledge and your understanding, it's not going to be sustainable, because you don't know why, you don't see the wood for the trees, and you get a little bit confused, or you're not really knowing where you're going. So if you can't stick with it, you're not going to get the results that you want. So by us giving essentially a day and a half off from really strict focus means it becomes more sustainable, because you're not all or nothing. And that all means that you're more consistent with it. All right. Oh, jump to slide. So sustainability breeds consistency. All right. So if you can stick with something, you're going to be consistent, and vice versa. So consistency is the most important thing to achieving an outcome in nutrition. If you're going to do something for a week and then chop and change, you're going to try another approach because that one wasn't working, and then your neighbor's doing keto, so you want to do that, and this guy's doing a gluten-free diet, so you want to do that, you're not going to get results. I can promise you that. The only thing that's going to get you results is something that you can stick with and you can be consistent about. It means day in, day out, you're eating not the same foods, but the same way. It might be the same number of meals, it might be the same portions, and it'll change a little bit when you're a bit more active or a little bit less active, whatever. But your general approach to nutrition needs to be consistent, right? So even looking at 5.5 days on and a day and a half off, that's still consistent. It means every week, 80% of the time, you are doing it. And 20% of the time, you're giving yourself a little bit of break from really dialing it in that much. You're still consistent, you're not doing it 100% of the time, because we know that that's not sustainable. So your approach to it is all about consistency, because that's the only way to get meaningful and lasting results. Right? We can do all sorts of things to you. We can make you do something 100% of the time. You're going to get results in 3 weeks, and the weight's going to fall off. And then you go back to what you were doing, no one's won, because that weight's going to pile back on. There might be sort of rebound weight gain, if that was the focus. And no one's won that way. So it needs to be meaningful and lasting to know that has been impactful. The physiology of it is, so apart from just trying to give everyone a framework to stick within that we can continue with, and we can see ourselves eating this way forever because it's not overly restrictive, there's also a physiological rationale behind it, and it's supported by really good research and studies in this space. But and speaking possibly a little bit more to our one-on-ones, but when you go through chronic dieting, so you're on a calorie restriction for quite a long time, your body adapts to that. I did an ed on this a little while back on plateaus and how to get through them and things, but there's this theory of metabolic adaptation, or this term of metabolic adaptation. And what happens is the longer that you put in your body under a calorie restriction, the more your body's going to try to counter that. It doesn't want that. It doesn't want this unnecessary stress that is unnatural. Your body always wants to stay in a midpoint of homeostasis. It doesn't actually want to pick up weight or drop weight. It's quite happy. And it's only because of the environment we put it under that it goes one way or the other. So there are different things that it does to counter that. We can use that to our advantage, but if we're not aware of it, it can be quite a downside to long-term dieting. So what often happens, if your intake is too low for too long, your metabolism can slow, right? Your metabolic rate can drop a little bit, sometimes between 5 to 15% less than before you were dieting. So if your calorie gap was only about 10% of your intake, maybe even less because you needed to only shave off slightly, by now burning 15% less energy every day, it means you're going to hit that wall, you're going to plateau. Then you're going to start eating less and less and less, not understanding kind of what's going on, and you get into a state of deprivation and starving yourself because you want to see these results, but just because you haven't gone around about it in the right way. So metabolism can slow, your body's hunger kicks up. It tells you, I need more food. So now it's fighting against this state of calorie restriction that you're in. And your hormones come into play, and they're going to affect your metabolic rate. They're going to affect your hunger, and they're going to affect how effective your day is. And because they're trying to get you to eat more, essentially. Your exercise quality can drop, which means you actually burn less calories during exercise. Your body wants to conserve energy, so it doesn't want you to push hard. Even though your watch is telling you one thing, you're actually likely going to be burning less because your body finds its most economic way of doing things. And if you're dropping weight, particularly quite quickly, you might be losing some muscle mass, which goes back to the first point, slowing your metabolism. The big driver of that is a loss of muscle mass. So if you're eating way too little, your body's going to break down everything, not just fat, muscle, bone even, fat loss. So that's not what we want. Big calorie restriction, and the longer that goes on, the more likely that becomes. Your daily movement also slows down. So it's not a decision that you make, but your body just wants to move less. So your energy is a little bit slow. Your daily steps will drop a bit. You won't fidget as much. Your body just wants to try and do things as easily as it can. So your daily movement, which again can contribute about 10 to 15% of your expenditure, is now less. Your digestion will also slow. That means your body's trying to get as much energy out of the food that you're eating as it can. So it goes through your gut really slowly so that absolutely everything can get out of there, which means you're extracting more calories from your food than you were beforehand. So these are some of the downsides to chronic calorie restriction, and particularly when the calorie restriction is too high. So by adding in 20% of the time or a day and a half where your calories are going to be higher, it means you mitigate some of that risk. It means you're giving your body essentially, I like to see them as refeeds. It's a refuel. It's a little bit more. So on that day and a half, you want more calories because physiologically, it's actually going a long way to giving your body a little boost. It doesn't think that, well, I'm not getting any food. You give it to that, and all of a sudden you actually burn a little bit more. Your energy expenditure is a little bit higher. Your exercise is a little bit better. Your metabolism isn't slow. You're not as hungry anymore because you've had that little opportunity to eat a little bit more. So it's an important tool. It's not there for us to give it to you as a reward to say, well, just do this for 5.5 days. Well done. You've got a day and a half to do what you like. It's a day and a half to actually give your body an opportunity to nourish a little bit more and prevent some of these risks of chronic dieting and help you achieve your results that way. So that's the fourth component here of if you've got this programmed aspect of it, you understand a little bit about the physiology and the science behind it. It's not just a culture of do something 80% of the time because the other 20 doesn't matter. If that 20 is actually helping you get results a little bit better. You tie that in with being sustainable. You're doing this for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you're consistent with that every week. It's pretty much the same. That is what results are. If it's sustainable and you're sticking with it and you're consistent, but you're chronically undereating, if you're missing one of those aspects on the screen there, the chances are your results aren't going to be good. Right? So trust us when we say this and we put into everything that we're doing. If you're on the one-on-one and we've got some one-on-one clients here, it's there for a reason. It's there to be used, right? Because we want to avoid running into some issues down the line, right? And that's going to improve your results. And it's also going to help your mindset, which means you're happier because you're getting a little bit more food, you're nourishing your body, you are not being deprived, you don't feel like you're on this hectic diet, and you still get an opportunity to enjoy the foods that you think might not be the best for you. But the other aspect, you get an opportunity to practice over those day and a half. And that's the bottom two things where I'm talking about mindfulness. And when I get to the how-to of this, the little things that you can do to use your day and a half to practice for long term. So you're going to be mindful in that space. You're going to listen to your body. You're going to understand it a little bit. You might start to pick up that you're able to train a little harder on the weekends or whenever your day and a half is, because you're just giving a little bit more fuel. And it's just that opportunity to practice everything and be in the space of eating without following a structured program over the day and a half. So that's why it's practicing. It's practicing for the long term. All right. How you do this is up to you a little bit. On the one-on-one, we give you some guidance around this. But the first way is to wing it and just see what happens. That means stick to, if you're on Jeff Life, stick to our 5 principles, 5.5 days, tick them off every day, collect your green dots, think about what you're doing, and be mindful in everything that you want, each of our 5 principles, and base it off your progress. How am I going? Is this working for me? If you've got a nutrition plan through any of the challenges or our one-on-one, stick to it for 5.5 days, then on your day and a half, do what you like. See how you go. If it works for you, that's magic. That's cool. Quite often it doesn't if that day and a half is very nasty, because all the hard work that you do in 5.5 days, you can undo in a day and a half like that. So if you've just followed a nice moderate calorie restriction of the 5.5 days like we do, typically maybe 400 or 500 calories a day, just because you want to get that weight starting to come down, you want to lean up, you want to see significant changes on the scale, you can quite easily go make up 2,000 calories in your day and a half, very simply. A couple of drinks, a few extra dressings, a couple of snacks here and there, and in your day and a half, you've quickly accumulated that back, which means you're good for 5.5 days. But if that day and a half is an absolute nightmare, you're not going to get results. So you need to judge this off your progress. If you're sticking to things really well for 80% of the time, you just then need to look at what that 20% entails. And then maybe you need some structure. The structure that we give here is normally saying, right, from Friday dinner through to Saturday dinner, that's your day and a half, right? It's 5-6 meals, and those are your opportunities to have kind of a little miss, right? And a miss means that your food choice is maybe not the best one. So in terms of the food lists that we've got or what we know is healthy for us, you've eating the right amount, but your food choice is just a little bit different. So it's a high-fat cut of meat instead of a nice lean one. It's maybe a drink or a sauce or something that's just higher calorie or has a little added sugar or whatever the case is. It's a food choice that isn't great. It doesn't match your bigger picture goals. That could be a miss, right? The other could be your portion size. So either too big or too little. So if you're skipping meals, that's also, it's a miss. Right, you don't, even under eating on your day and a half is also going to be a miss, but we don't want to use it that way. If your portion size is too big, you've missed it by anything that you've missed, that's a miss. So you could quite easily accumulate that on one plate. And if your protein, starch, fat, whatever, 3 things on a plate are all a little bit too big, that's 3 in 1, and you maybe have a calorie containing drink with it, that's 1 meal and you've already used up 4 misses out of your 6 for the week. And that's done. So if that works for you, that's fine. Maybe you've got a event on Friday night, it's an anniversary or it's a dinner with some friends or whatever. That's cool. Use that to kind of accumulate them all, but that means Saturday you don't have the opportunity to carry on with the rest of your day and a half. You've ticked off your 6 misses. It's a nice way to just give you a starting point to kind of see where you're going. Within that, I'd also try and plan it. Quite often we go wrong because we do just wing it. And we're not yet in tune with what, maybe our hunger and satiety is telling us how much we should be eating. We haven't stuck with the program for long enough for it just to become natural and habitual. One of the most rewarding things is when someone's been on a program and they actually, they close off with us on with coaching on a Friday afternoon, so catch you on Monday, and say, this weekend, I enjoyed my day and a half. It wasn't that bad, but I just didn't feel good. So my body was telling me that what I was eating wasn't great. And that only comes from practice. So you've been eating so well for so long and your body's just really nourished and feeling great. All of a sudden you have a weekend where it's maybe some refined carbohydrates and high fat things and a bit of alcohol, and your body just says to you that was an lacquer. And that is important, because you're not always going to have a plan to follow, a coach in your corner, whatever the case is. If you can't use your own body's cues and messages and your own thought process to guide your behavior and listen more to what your body's saying, you're not going to win. So that's why we're using it as practice for the long term. So if you need to add it to your plan, to do that. Say Wednesday night, I have it's our anniversary. So that's going to be one of my 1.5 days. I'm going to use up 6 misses because it's a special occasion and there are going to be 6 things that are off plan quite easily, and I'm done. That's fine. It doesn't mean, you've done that and then you've forgotten about it and you get to Friday and you think, oh, it's a day and a half off again. So add it to your menu, add it to your planner, add it to your calendar if you have to, until it becomes habitual so you can practice it. If you need to document it, that's great. On our one-on-one, some coaches will also get clients to still send them their photos, or just take them for yourself. Send them anyway. You've got somewhere that you can reference and document what your weekends were like, or when you started your program, or your journey, what your weekends used to be like and what they are now 6 or 7 months later, and maybe how proud that makes you to see the foods that you're choosing, the portions. They still might not be on plan, but you look at the before and after of what those meals look like, or you've got a little journal of them, and what still feels like great food for you. It makes you happy. You're still able to enjoy it. You don't feel deprived. They might be really good food choices where 6 months ago they weren't. So it's a nice reinforcement of the actions and habits that you're putting into place. So try and track it. Put something together that allows you to track it. Then why I say use this as practice for life is because what you're doing now, we need to try and make sure that you're doing later. So the behaviors that you are implementing when you're following a plan on your day and a half off are going to become the behaviors that carry you through every day. Because you won't always have that program to follow, you won't always have a coach, you won't always be on a challenge, you won't always be logging your nutrition. But if your foundation isn't still supporting good food choices, you're not winning at this. So you need to practice it on your day and a half off, so that these are the things that are going to start becoming replications of a normal day. All right. That might even mean wherever it goes into your food choices, your fluids, your whatever the case is, you need to practice them. You need to listen to your hunger and satiety. We talk about this all the time. We've got Jeff Eds in this space. Those, and like the feedback where your body just says, I don't feel so great after the last day. Fantastic. Listen to it. Listen to what it really feels like to be hungry, so that that's driving food intake. It's not habit. It's not, I'm out the cage, my 5.5 days are up, so I'm just going to eat for the sake of eating. That's not what it's about. You still want to listen to your cues. You want to choose the foods you want to choose, but base how much you're eating off how much you think you need. So you can get away with your food choices, but your portions are still in check. And that gives you a much bigger range of foods to choose from, a flexible approach to nutritional intake. And that means you're set up for success the longer that this goes on. You're also able to eat to a point where you never feel overstuffed, and we've got our little hunger game of trying to kind of never start eating when we're too hungry and never finish eating when we're absolutely stuffed. And it's a thing that you can practice in your day and a half off, because your food choices are different, but I'm still going to practice what I'm doing here in terms of how much I want to eat. So you're not taking a step back. You want to avoid guilt. So a day and a half means do it, but don't feel guilty about it. You need to own whatever you do. It's your decision. It's your choice. If you go so hard that on Monday you feel terrible, you've picked up some weight, whatever the case is, you can't feel guilty about it. You just got to get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. What often happens is if you have a little bit more carbohydrates over the weekend as well, or a little bit more fluid, your fluid weight's going to be a bit higher. So if your weekends are a little bit amiss, don't weigh yourself on a Monday. Don't do that, because now you're just giving yourself another speed bump. It might take you till Wednesday to get over that. So do it on a Thursday morning. Do it on a Friday when your good work's all been put in and you've rather got trends towards the back end of the week, because weight's going to fluctuate over a weekend, and it's normally fluid weight, but it's going to play with your mind. Okay. On that note, be mindful over the weekend. That ties into the hunger, the satiety, the why are we eating, it's still nourishing your soul. It's a social, cultural event, or whatever it is. These are still important aspects of food and nutrition, but be present in the moment. Don't just eat for the sake of it. It's in front of you. You didn't actually think about it. You're not actually appreciating what it is, that it's a food choice that's less than ideal, but it still fits in with what's happening, because you're able to control your portions. You have a little bit, you have it for the taste and enjoyment, but you're done. But importantly, you're also not using it as reward. It's not 5.5 days of hard work. I've now got a day and a half to reward myself for it. That's not what it's about. And that day and a half is about practicing. It's about a little bit of flexibility, but there's no reward culture around food. We need to move away from that. It's not, I've worked hard, I've earned to go and do whatever over the day and a half. No, again, that's going to set you up for long-term failure if you've got this relationship and link between working hard so that I can earn poor food choices, I can earn overeating. That's not great. Because there's a time that hard work's going to drop off, but this stimulation of eating a little bit extra, getting away with that, and this is going to root. And all the hard work you put in now, we're going to rebound off that. And that's not what we want to do. Make sure you're active on your off days. Because you've got more fuel in the tank, your body is actually going to feel pretty good. It wants to exercise, but you're just going to sit on your bum for a day and a half. That's also not great. So obviously we tie it into the weekend again, where on a Saturday morning, we've got a nice, good session, and we're always encouraging you to be active over the weekend. It's active recovery. So Saturday afternoon or Sunday, get out there with the kids or the dogs or to the beach or up the mountain or whatever the case is. Be as active as you can, because you've got more energy. Your body wants to burn more. Give it an opportunity to do that. And I promise you're going to see your results improve because of it. So use it wisely, understand what it's about, the long-term vision for it, and how you can maximize what you want to do through that, through the processes and the foundations that you're building, and the habits that you're creating, and how important it is as sort of part of all of that. Okay, so that is my slide session. Cool. Hopefully you guys have found that useful. I'm going to scroll through any questions that might have come in as we were going through it all, or if you've got any that have come to mind now, let me know. Coach Jethro in the house, lovely. Peeps just saying hi. A couple of coaches. Mini Creek loves this topic. Beautiful. Chantal, still just catching up with everyone who was saying hello. Coach Tash, 100%. Planning is key in every aspect of life. We want to have a plan. So even though you've got this flexibility, it still needs to fit in with the bigger picture. Some of us it might work. We might understand it well enough, and our underlying behaviors might be good enough. For the rest, we need that structure just to kind of until those foundations are in place, we've got to practice it. So use the structure, plan it, put it together until it just becomes essentially natural. All right. Cool. Facebook user says makes so much sense. Sorry, the name didn't pull through. Tash loves our approach to nutrition. Minnie says, I have something sweet over a weekend. Is that a no-no? Minnie, I want to throw that back at you. I want to know what you feel about that. Why would you think it's a no-no? What are you using it for, and how does it come about? The day and a half there is to have the things that you kind of feel are missing on the 5.5 days that you feel like. All right. If you have something sweet, that's cool. If you have some alcohol, that's cool. If you have something high fat, that's cool. Just be mindful of how much it is and how you feel about it. If you feel like you've overeaten afterwards, don't. If you feel guilty because of it, that's not great either. But if it's just because you felt like it, that's fine. It's totally fine. That's what it's about. But it doesn't mean that something sweet becomes 7 different times over the weekend. You've gone for an ice cream and a waffle, and then there was some chocolate-coated peanuts, which are my soft spot. You find those in the house, and then there's a biscuit, and then if you can have one thing, you own it, you're cool about it, and off you go. Fantastic. That's what it's about. So over that day and a half, there's no, it holds true for general nutrition, but there's no one food that is bad. There's no one food that is evil, in the same way that there's no one food that's good either. It's the bigger picture. So if the entire day and a half is made up of all these things, not great. But one thing here and there is not going to make or break the bigger picture, as long as you can isolate it to what it needs to be. Karika, happy to be starting the one-on-one after the 45-day challenge. Beautiful. You need guidance on food. Much better if you understand the 1.5 day. And that's what it's about. That's what our challenges are for. That's epic. I love reading that. So you've taken the first steps. 45 days is a nice, good commitment. There are a lot of things that come into place, but we can't tailor the nutrition and the training specifically for you, but it's a kickstart. Now you know, right, I need guidance on my food. I'm starting to learn a little bit about this. What do I need? You need something tailored. You need a coach in your corner. You need the understanding, and that's exactly what it's about. So it makes me happy to read that. Debbie, wine, yes, that's where wine fits in as well. So any alcohol over the weekend. Again, it's quite easy to overdo it. It doesn't mean all of your units that you've saved up over the week you get to have on the weekend. You still want a moderate intake of alcohol over the weekend. So 1 to 2 units per day for female, 2 to 3 for a male. So that's 1 or 2 drinks. That's it. That's done. It doesn't mean, cool, I'm going to sit down with a bottle of wine on Friday night, because that's not great. So just enjoy it for what it is. Appreciate it. And know that it's great. Again, nothing wrong with it. And while you're trying to achieve your goals, you stick with it in that way. All right. Coach Tash, even GNT is her soft spot. Yes. Karaka, you have actually experienced where you craved something and then after having it, realized that your taste for it had changed and you no longer enjoyed it as much as I thought it would, if that makes sense. It totally does. And that's something we actually see quite a bit, because your tastes are changing, your enjoyment, your appreciation of food, and the way that your body kind of feels off it. And these are all very important things. And the way we perceive food and tastes and experiences is going to change. Quite often it's for the good, and I hope in that experience you had is for that, where you really felt like something, you really felt like that chocolate or that ice cream, and had a couple of mouthfuls, and you were just like, well, it didn't hit the spot that it did, because there are other things that provide me this perception or feeling of joy or whatever the case is. And that's fantastic, because once your body tells you that, you listen to those cues, and the chances of these behaviors kind of staying true are better. And Karaka, we do hear that repeatedly, and the longer that you stick with something, the more positive that becomes, and the more it's going to be helpful in the long term. Debbie, you can only drink a glass or 2 of wine anyway. This is a very positive change for me, not the winemakers. Yeah, isn't it just? It was with Pringles that used to be a weakness. Cool. So a nice thing to be able to sort of get rid of. And now, I mean, it's funny. There might be something else, that's even part of your normal 5.5 days, that it's carrots and hummus. I don't know. That all of a sudden you have that and you're just like, it just tastes lekker. I'm happy with that. There's a nice peach, and I bite into that, and it's juicy and it's tasty, and that gives me as much joy and reward as having a slice of cheesecake or whatever. Like they're things. And once we start to appreciate that it doesn't have to be these forbidden foods, because there's nothing forbidden, we just want to kind of have something that we can appreciate. That's great. Or it might just be a good home cooked meal, and everything's on plan, but there's a little bit of love in the dish, and that's what makes you feel lekker. And that's what we want to kind of drill home. Sharon, is it possible to reverse your sweet tooth? It definitely is. So sweetness is a learned taste. For someone that has 1 teaspoon, as an example, someone who uses 1 teaspoon of sugar in their tea or coffee, and someone who uses 5 teaspoons, it's going to taste exactly the same to each person, because sweetness is a learned taste. It's a sensitivity in your tongue that either gets dulled the more sugar you have, or you reverse it the other way. So one way is you start having less and less of it, so that things that are naturally sweet become sweeter, because your sensitivity in your tongue's improved to it. So it's an easy way to go about it. If you have 2 teaspoons of sugar in your coffee, go to 1 for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, go to 0. And you'll be able to find that everything just changes a little bit that way. If there's less sweetness, and that also goes for artificial sweetness. One of the reasons I never kind of recommend them is it still keeps that sensitivity to sweet tastes, which means we want it, because sweetness is it encourages behavior and us wanting to either eat more, or the body's interpreting those messages. So if we train it in the other way, we're going to get better out of it. So Debbie, normal chocolate tastes sickly sweet to you now that you're used to eating dark chocolate. Brilliant example. Nice one. So it gives me a new one to talk about instead of the coffee one. But So going to dark chocolates, lower sugar content, more bitter. So now when you're exposed to something that previously tasted normal, now it just tastes so sweet because of it. So it's purely trained, and we have to detrain off that. And we only do that through practicing a new habit. So it's looking for things that are less sweet, has less of a sweet stimulation in the tongue. Lisa, how do you deal with cravings for sweetness after dinner? One, you look at the quality of your dinner and make sure that dinner was right. So it's not a hunger thing, a physiological hunger thing. If it is, just sort out dinner and get your protein right. You might find adding a little bit of carbohydrate to dinner means that you don't crave or end up having the chocolate or the custard or the biscuits or whatever at night. But the other thing is there are other ways of doing it. So the craving can be a boredom thing. It can be a habit thing. And that's just about breaking through it. You've got to give yourself something new to do. So if it's in front of the TV and just because you're mindless, it's maybe you need to be doing something instead. Or quite often we find things like a cup of tea, some sparkling water, because the stimulation on the tongue can help. And those kinds of things that still give you an aspect, but it's not a behavior of linking, or it's post dinner all of a sudden I want something sweet, because normally it's not physiological, it's normally just habit. And you've got to create a new habit in that space. All right. Brilliant. Guys, I think I got to the questions. I'm going to scroll back up again just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And I do not think so. So, lovely. Guys, if you have any more questions, please just fire them through to me. But hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding what and why and how, and maybe where you're going wrong or where you can do better, or reinforces some really good things that you are doing. Just give you something to think about. Food for thought. That's why we call it that. So practice it this weekend. From tonight, be mindful in the space, understand there's a reason for it, but see maybe where you're winning on your day and a half off and where you can put a little bit more work into based on your goals. It's all about progress. So see how you're doing and where we can always be better. That's what we want. All right. Have a fabulous day and a half, guys. Enjoy it. Be with us. Get bright and early tomorrow for our Fiercely Feminine workout. And Sunday, keep nice and active. And then Monday, we're hard at it again. And we're back into full swing last week of the month. Can you believe it? If you want some more structure as well, guys, the one-on-one program, that's exactly what it's there for. We give you the structure. We coach you through it. We'll work with you to find out where those weaknesses and things are. And obviously at the moment, we've got our 25% off as well. So coupon, level up. Go put that in, get it done. It's payday today. So go invest in yourself so that these things all kind of make sense. There we go. Level up. 25% off your first month on the one-on-one coaching program. Guys in the back end are on it. So if you need that help, that's what we are here for. If you're on the challenge, 2 weeks down, 1 to go. Or if you're on Jono's, a little bit longer. Keep pushing. You don't have your day and a half, so keep going. You can have your day and a half next weekend. We want to see you through to the end to get the best results. All right. Guys, have a good one. I will see you all next week again. Ciao for now.